All right, welcome back. We have eaten our cornbread, had our supper, and now ready for a little more Beowulf. So what I'm going to do with this video is I'm going to finish up the portion that is called The Coming of Beowulf, and I will do the battle with Grendel, and then I will put the next parts on another video, just because I don't know how far we're going to get in class. So anyway, we are on page 44, and I stopped at about line 144. So where we're picking up is when Beowulf and his men, the Geats, land at Hrothgar's land, and this is Denmark, and there's a watchman on the hill, and there's an encounter between these folks. And I think, let's see, if I go here, actually, and I go to present, this may take a while for it to load. So I'm just going to start reading while it does that, because I'm trying to upload the first video. High on a wall, a Danish watcher patrolling along the cliffs saw the travelers crossing to the shore, their shields raised and shining. He came riding down, Hrothgar's lieutenant, spurring his horse, needing to know why they'd landed these men in armor. Okay, so think about it. If you're supposed to be watching the land, looking out to sea, and you see these guys coming in full armor with their spears and everything, you might think you're under attack, so you'd be kind of nervous and scared. That's what this guy is thinking. Shaking his heavy spear in their faces, he spoke. Whose soldiers are you? You who've been carried in your deep-keeled ship across the sea road to this country of mine. Listen, I've stood on these cliffs longer than you know, keeping our coast free of pirates, raiders sneaking ashore from their ships, seeking our lives and our gold. A little bit of a brag there. Remember I said at the beginning of the video how during this time period, bragging was, honorable. It was a good thing to brag about yourself. So he's kind of given his little resume. Hey, I've stood here a long time. I've watched out for pirates and raiders, so you guys, you can't sneak up on me. None have ever come more openly, and yet you've offered no password, no sign from my prince, no permission from my people for your landing here, nor have I ever seen out of all the men on earth one greater than has come with you. No commoner carries such weapons unless his appearance and his beauty are both lies. Okay, so he's giving a little compliment there. He's like, oh, you have this really amazing guy with you. I've never seen anyone so amazing. Beowulf's probably soaking that all up, going, no, you haven't. You! Tell me your name and your father's. Want to know your lineage. No spies go further into Danish soil than you've come already. Strangers from wherever 'twas you sailed, tell it, and tell it quickly. The quicker the better, I say, for us all. Speak, say exactly who you are, and from where, and why. Their leader answered them, Beowulf, unlocking words from deep in his breast. Okay, so I really like the wording there. Unlocking the words, like he's taking a key and taking these words out, and then here he says who he is. We are Geats, men who follow Hygelac. My father was a famous soldier, known far and wide as a leader of men. His name was Edgetho. His life lasted many winters. Wise men all over the earth surely remember him still. And we have come seeking your prince, Healfdene's son, protector of his people, only in friendship. Instruct us, watchmen. Help us with your words. Our errand is a great one. Our business with the glorious king of the Danes, no secret. There's nothing dark or hidden in our coming. You know, if we've heard the truth and have been told honestly, that your country is cursed with some strange vicious creature that hunts only at night, and that no one has seen. It said, watchman, that he has slaughtered your people, brought terror to the darkness. Perhaps Hrothgar can hunt here in my heart for some way to drive this devil out, if anything will ever end the evils afflicting your wise and famous lord. Don't you just love it? So he tells whose son he is. He tells why he's come. Hey, we heard you've got a monster, unless somebody made this story up. And Hrothgar can hunt in my heart to see that I'm pure and noble and blah, blah, blah. Okay, Beowulf. Back to Hrothgar can hunt. Let's see. Here, he can cool his burning sorrow, or else he may see his suffering go on forever, for as long as Heorot towers high on your hills. Okay, I guess Beowulf said it. If you don't have me help you, your sorrow's never going to go away. Nobody else can help you. Wow, it's taking a long time for that to load. I wonder if I should just give up on that view. Well, there we go. Huh. So, well, we'll just escape. All right. I did have just a mention of the wording that I like, unlocking his breast. We are Geats. So think about how it should be spoken, because if we look at this other translation, you know, we have the Raffle version. This is from Chickering. What do you think? Which one do you like better? We are the race of the Geatish nation, sworn hearth companions of Hygelac their king. My own father was well known abroad, a noble battle leader. Ecthgau by name, he saw many winters before he passed on. Old from our courtyards, every wise counselor throughout the world remembers him well. Okay, so see any differences? One is definitely more formal. One is more bragging in a way. Which do you prefer? And why do you prefer it? Okay. Nope, don't want to go there yet. Just think about that translation. Okay, so what does this mounted officer reply? The mounted officer answered him bluntly, the brave watchman. A soldier should know the difference between words and deeds. Ooh, ouch! That's a diss to Beowulf. Like, you can talk big words, but I have not seen any deeds from you, and you better know better, you young pup. Because we can kind of get the sense that Beowulf is younger, the watchman is older. He already said he stood on these cliffs longer than you know, kind of like, hey, baby face. So, what does he continue to say? And keep that knowledge clear in his brain. He's basically calling Beowulf a man of very little brain, not too smart. But then he's backing off a little. I believe your words. I trust in your friendship. Go forward, weapons and armor and all. Go on into Denmark. I'll guide you myself, and my men will guard your ship. Keep it safe here on our shores. Your fresh tarred boat, watch it well, until that curving prow carries across the sea to Geatland a chosen warrior who bravely does battle with the creature hunting our people, who survives that horror unhurt and goes home bearing our love. Just, you know, there's two reasons why he wants to guard the ship with his men, to make sure all's on the level and they don't come and loot and then try to sneak off. So he'll make sure that ship stays there. All right, back to the Beowulf. Then they moved on. Their boat lay moored, tied tight to its anchor. Glittering at the top of their golden helmets, wild boar heads gleamed, shining decorations swinging as they marched, erect like guards, like sentinels, as though ready to fight. So the decorations, simile, are like guards or sentinels. So even these helmets and all, seem to have some protective quality beyond just being for their physical protection. That's kind of the pagan beliefs. They marched, Beowulf and his men and their guide, until they could see the gables of Heorot, covered with hammered gold and glowing in the sun. They didn't spare any expense on this building. That most famous of all dwellings, towering majestic, its glittering roofs, visible far across the land. Their guide reined in his horse, pointing to that hall built by Hrothgar for the best and bravest of his men. The path was plain. They could see their way. A little bit of alliteration in those lines, path and plain. Okay, so Beowulf and his men arrive at Heorot, and they're going to be escorted to see King Hrothgar. Before that happens, these golden helmets that I kind of talked about a little bit, they were also decorated with boar heads because Anglo-Saxons believed if you had a boar on the helmet, and the picture in our text doesn't really show that. I thought there was a picture somewhere in here. But anyway, it is supposed to protect the wearer in battle then. So think about boars, wild boars. They have tusks, they're fierce, and so if you have a boar on your helmet, that's supposed to symbolize that you're tough and you're not going to be easily beaten. So a little bit about their clothing. Okay, not there yet. All right. So page 46, line 229. So Beowulf has to introduce himself. Beowulf arose with his men around him, ordering a few to remain with their weapons, leading the others quickly along under Heorot's steep roof into Hrothgar's presence. Standing on that prince's own hearth, helmeted, the silvery metal of his mail shirt gleaming with a smith's high art, he greeted the Danes' great lord. Okay, so we've heard a couple times about how good looking he is and his armor, so he's shining, he's gleaming, he's standing here. Hail, Hrothgar! Hygelac is my cousin and my king. The days of my youth have been filled with glory. Now, Grendel's name has echoed in our land. Sailors have brought us stories of Heorot, the best of all mead halls, deserted and useless when the moon hangs in the skies and the sun had lit light and life fleeing together. Like those L's for the alliteration. My people have said, the wisest, most knowing and best of them, that my duty was to go to the Danes' great king. They have seen my strength for themselves, have watched me rise from the darkness of war, dripping with my enemy's blood. I drove 5 great giants into chains, chased all that race from the earth. I swam in the blackness of night, hunting monsters out of the ocean and killing them one by one. Death was my errand, and the fate they had earned. Now, Grendel and I are called together, and I've come. Grant me then, Lord and Protector of this noble place, a single request. I have come so far, O shelterer of warriors and your people's loved friend, that this one favor you should not refuse me, that I alone, and with the help of my men, may purge all evil from this hall. I have heard, too, that the monster's scorn of men is so great that he needs no weapons and fears none, nor will I. My lord Hygelac might think less of me if I let my sword go where my feet were afraid to, if I hid behind some broad linden shield. My hands alone shall fight for me, struggle for life against the monster. God must decide who will be given to death's cold grip. Grendel's plan, I think, will be what it has been before, to invade this hall and gorge his belly with our bodies, if he can. And I think, if my time will have come, there will be nothing to mourn over, no corpse to prepare for its grave. Grendel will carry our bloody flesh to the moors, crunch on our bones, and smear torn scraps of our skin on the walls of his den. No, I expect no Danes will fret about sewing our shrouds if he wins. And if death does take me, send the hammered mail of my armor to Higelac. Return the inheritance I had from Rethel, and he from Wayland. Fate will unwind as it must. All right, so that Wayland now, just look at the side note in your textbook. According to Germanic folklore, there was this invisible blacksmith who made armor, kind of like the Greeks and the Romans had Hephaestus or Vulcan making armor for them. So supposedly this great armor that Beowulf has is from this hero of the folklore. Okay, so backing up, just making sure we cover everything. Hrothgar, he doesn't say anything as Beowulf makes this long speech telling why he's come to Herat. And think about it. If you had a problem that you couldn't solve, and you're a king, and you've had this problem for 12 years, and nobody's been able to help you and get rid of it, do you really want to say, oh, I'm so glad you're here, because it's making you look like a sissy and not very good. So poor Hrothgar, he's got a hero on his hands to help him out. And along with that, Beowulf just goes on and brags about himself. He boasts of his achievements, the giants, the sea monsters. He's presenting his heroic resume. Do you think it's a little excessive? The Anglo-Saxons actually thought, yeah, this is good. I mean, we want to know who our heroes are and what they've all done. So humility was not valued. Courage, strength, and stamina were valued. Swordplay was not valued quite as much as raw physical strength. And so we hear Beowulf say, well, I kind of hear Grendel just fights barehanded, so I'm going to do the same. I don't want him to one-up me. He's just a monster. I can do better than that. So also, I told you all the movie versions were bad. In one of the movie versions, they actually had the Beowulf fighting completely naked. So, you know, that's another reason why I'm not showing those in class. So Beowulf says he will fight Grendel without using weapons. What does that tell us about Beowulf? Okay, number one, he's gutsy, has a lot of confidence. He is pretty strong. He's brave or foolish. What do you think of the plan? Would you think it's a good idea or not? Our storyteller here, the rhapsode who originally told us this story, is kind of walking this line between the Christianity and pagan beliefs here. So if we take a closer look at lines 269 to 284, God must decide who will be given to death's cold grip. In other words, saying it's in God's hands. And then he talks about Grendel's plan. And he says, you know, if it is my time, there's not going to be any mourning, no corpse, nothing, because Grendel's just going to crunch on our bones and carry them and put scraps. So if death takes me, you know, just send my armor to Higelac and return it. This is that good armor I got from Wayland. Okay, so on the one hand, he's saying God must decide. On the other hand, there's nothing about, you know, bury me, make sure my soul goes to heaven. If they thought that they could influence that in any way, do the last rites or something. Basically, just take care of my armor, and mentions that it was made by someone who doesn't really exist. So there we have both those Christian and pagan beliefs once again. All right, so we are on to the battle with Grendel. This is a time for you to do that one sentence summary on your sheet though. So the one sentence summary for the coming of Beowulf, he has come. And now, our next episode is the battle. So that night, Beowulf and his men take the places of Hrothgar and the Danes inside Heorot. While his men sleep, Beowulf lies awake, eager to meet with Grendel. Okay, so when's he coming? Is he here yet? Is he coming? Anybody hear him? Anything? So as you read these next lines, watch for how our storyteller is trying to build up the suspense and make us anticipate Grendel's coming. Look for sensory details or details that kind of create an image in your mind. And again, look for alliteration because it's all through here. Out from the marsh, from the foot of misty hills and bogs, bearing God's hatred, Grendel came, hoping to kill anyone he could trap on this trip to high Heorot. He moved quickly through the cloudy night, up from his swampland, sliding silently toward that gold-shining hall. He had visited Hrothgar's home before, knew the way, but never before nor after that night found Heorot defended so firmly, his reception so harsh. Oh, there's some good foreshadowing right there too. Never before or after that night. Okay, things are changing with Beowulf being there. All right, we'll just leave that up. We'll do the kennings after we get there. He journeyed, forever joyless, straight to the door, then snapped it open, tore its iron fasteners with a touch, and rushed angrily over the threshold. He strode quickly across the inlaid floor, snarling and fierce. His eyes gleamed in the darkness, burned with a gruesome light. A few things to notice here. Joyless, he can't have joy because he can never know God's love. And angry, he's still just seething and angry. The guy ought to see a psychologist. And then his eyes burned with a gruesome light. Light is capitalized. So light is normally a symbol of good, but this gruesome light, maybe devilish light, glowing eyes, like in a cartoon or something. Then he stopped, seeing the hall crowded with sleeping warriors, stuffed with rows of young soldiers resting together. And his heart laughed. He relished the sight, intended to tear the life from those bodies by morning. The monster's mind was hot with the thought of food and the feasting his belly would soon know. But fate that night intended Grendel to gnaw the broken bones of his last human supper. A little more foreshadowing, in case you were wondering who's going to win. Fate that night intended Grendel to gnaw the broken bones of his last human supper. He's not going to get any supper here. No new food for him. Oh, poor Grendel. I'm starting to feel sorry for him. Human eyes were watching his evil steps, waiting to see his swift, hard claws. All right, human eyes, that's got to be our hero, Beowulf. Grendel snatched at the first geat he came to, ripped him apart. Wait a second, Beowulf, what are you doing? Grendel just tore one of your geats in half. Some hero. Anyway, ripped him apart, cut his body to bits with powerful jaws. Oh, wait a second. So he rips the guy and then he chews him and rips him more? Ew, yuck. This is getting a little graphic. Oh, I don't know if I can even read this next line. drank the blood from his veins, and bolted him down, hands and feet. Death and Grendel's great teeth came together, snapping life shut. Well, that's going to give me nightmares tonight. Then he stepped to another still body. Oh, but guess who it is? Clutched at Beowulf with his claws, grasped at a strong-hearted, wakeful sleeper. Ooh, we've got an oxymoron. Wakeful, sleeper. Fun. And was instantly seized himself, claws bent back, as Beowulf leaned up on one arm. That shepherd of evil, guardian of crime, knew at once that nowhere on earth had he met a man whose hands were harder. His mind was flooded with fear, but nothing could take his talons and himself from that tight, hard grip. Okay, so Beowulf's got him and pushed his claws back. And we have some kennings. Shepherd of evil, guardian of crime. That's referring to Grendel. And so Grendel knew he had never met a stronger man. And he's actually afraid. But unfortunately, he's in Beowulf's grip. And he can't get away. But now think about this. Shepherd of evil versus Grendel. Guardian of crime versus Grendel. These kennings create this ominous mood that really helps define who Grendel is. All right, keep an eye out on these kennings here. Grendel's one thought was to run from Beowulf, flee back to his marsh and hide there. This was a different Heorot than the hall he had emptied. But Hygelac's follower remembered his final boast, and standing erect stopped the monster's flight, fastened those claws in his fists till they cracked, clutched Grendel closer. Okay, Hygelac follower, that is Beowulf, because Beowulf's king is the king of Geatland, and Beowulf's cousin, Hygelac. Okay, so he takes his hands and bends them backward. I don't know, kind of sounds painful to me, and Grendel can't get away. The infamous killer. Okay, who's that referring to? Infamous killer. Grendel. The infamous killer fought for his freedom, wanting no flesh. Lots of F's there. But retreat, desiring nothing but escape. His claws had been caught. He was trapped. That trip to Heorot was a miserable journey for the writhing monster. The high hall rang. Its roof boards swayed, and the Danes shook with terror. Okay, so Geats are inside of Heorot. Danes are outside, kind of like, ooh, what's going to happen? Is this guy going to win? Is he going to defeat Grendel? And in one of the awful movies, they show like bodies slamming against the roof, and there's these big beams, because this is a building built way back in the day, and they really just basically cut down trees and use the whole tree as a beam. But because this fight is so fierce, and Beowulf and Grendel are slamming each other around, like the whole ceiling and wall is shaking and pounding and all of that. So that's happening. Did I miss any of the kennings? 336. Okay, don't think I did. Continuing on. Down the aisles the battle swept, angry and wild. Heorot trembled, wonderfully built to withstand the blows, the struggling great bodies beating at its beautiful walls, shaped and fastened with iron inside and out, artfully worked. The building stood firm. Couldn't just say the building was strong. Have to kind of give some description, because this is an epic. That's what they do. Its benches rattled, fell to the floor, gold-covered boards grating as Grendel and Beowulf battled across them. Hrothgar's wise men had fashioned Heorot to stand forever. Only fire, they had planned, could shatter what such skill had put together, swallow in hot flames such splendor of ivory and iron and wood. Kind of ironic, because fire, maybe you think of hell and the devil's fire, and, Grendel's kind of demon-like, and So only fire could destroy, and so here's Grendel, and as they're banging around fighting, he's not able to destroy it. Just interesting to think about. Suddenly, the sounds changed. The Danes started in new terror, cowering in their beds, as the terrible screams of the Almighty's enemy sang in the darkness. Almighty's enemy? It's got to be Grendel. He's screaming. The horrible shrieks of pain and defeat, the tears torn out of Grendel's taut throat. Tears don't usually come out of your throat. That must mean he's in a lot of pain and agony. Hell's captive. Hell's captive. That's got to be Grendel, like he's in his own living hell. Caught in the arms of him who was. Of him who all... I can't read this line. Of him who, of all the men on earth, was the strongest. Oh, that's Beowulf. He's the strongest guy on earth. All right. That mighty protector of men meant to hold the monster till its life leaked out, knowing the fiend was no use to anyone in Denmark. Yeah, I might as well just kill him. Like, what good is he? All of Beowulf's band, ooh, that's nice alliteration, Beowulf's band, had jumped from their beds, ancestral swords raised and ready. Ooh, Beowulf picked some good guys. They're ready to jump in on this. Determined to protect their prince. If they could. Excuse me. Their courage was great, but all wasted. They could hack at Grendel from every side, trying to open a path for his evil soul. But their points could not hurt him. The sharpest and hardest iron could not scratch at his skin. For that sin-stained demon, oh, that's Grendel again, sin-stained demon, had bewitched all men's weapons, laid spells that blunted every mortal man's blade. And yet, his time had come. His days were over. His death near. All right, so according to this translation, why couldn't Beowulf's men's weapons scratch or hurt Grendel? Here it says Grendel has bewitched the men's weapons. But in another version, in our Grendel by John Gardner version, he apparently consulted with a dragon and got some kind of charm. You know, it's an oral storytelling tradition to change the tale how you see fit to make it better, you know. So which do you like better? That Grendel bewitched the weapons, or he got some charm from a dragon? Anyway. Down to hell he would go, swept, groaning and helpless, to the waiting hands of still worse fiends. Now he discovered, once the afflicter of men, tormentor of their days, what it meant to feud with Almighty God. So that's a pretty big analogy. Beowulf is like God's chosen hero. Grendel saw that his strength was deserting him. His claws bound fast. Hegloc's brave follower, that's Beowulf, tearing at his hands. The monster's hatred rose higher, but his power had gone. He twisted in pain, and the bleeding sinews deep in his shoulder snapped. Muscle and bone split, and broke. The battle was over. Beowulf had been granted new glory. Grendel escaped, but wounded as he was, could flee to his den, his miserable hole at the bottom of the marsh, only to die, to wait for the end of all his days. So my question here on the slide, as Beowulf is tearing off his arm, Grendel realizes he is actually fighting against Almighty God's hero. Well, maybe that's putting it a little bit much. There's no mention of Beowulf in the Bible, right? Okay, so lines 397 to 410 in your own words. That's this next part I'm going to read. So see what you get out of it. And after that bloody combat, the Danes laughed with delight. He who had come to them from across the sea, that's Beowulf, bold and strong-minded, had driven affliction off, purged Heorot clean. He was happy now with that night's fierce work. The Danes had been served as he'd boasted he'd serve them. Beowulf, a prince of the Geats, had killed Grendel, ended the grief, the sorrow, the suffering, forced on Hrothgar's helpless people by a bloodthirsty fiend. No Dane doubted the victory, for the proof, hanging high from the rafters where Beowulf had hung it, was the monster's arm, claw, and shoulder and all. Dum, dum, dum. Okay, so, in your own words, well, we've got the Danes. They're laughing with delight. All right, Beowulf and the Geats, you saved us. You came across the sea and you put an end to it. Beowulf, he's pretty happy. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was actually going to be able to do it, but I did. Yeah, all right. And look, there's Grendel's arm. Ooh, I love that decorating. Nice. And notice the tricolon. Remember that tricolon, a group of three? He had killed Grendel, ended the grief, the sorrow, the suffering. Ooh, group of three. Very cool. All right, so that is the end of that portion. Go ahead and write a sentence of summary on your sheet. Next up is the monster's lair, but I'm going to make that in a separate video. Feel free to join me.